there is no distance.
Hello, and welcome to Women of Hope and Men of Faith on NBC-TC in the Northern Berkshires. I am your host, Reverend Susan LaFlamme Blocker. I want you to know we are excited that you joined us today, and it is not by chance. You see, God knew you would be tuning in today, and that you would need to hear what is being said. You are going through something in your life, and God wants to speak to you. Maybe our speaker is just the one you need to hear it from. We are ordinary people who are living testimonies of what God can and will do in a heart that is yielded to Him, even in our brokenness.
And I'm happy to introduce this morning my good friend, Debbie Murray. Speak a little bit about her. I've known her for over 20 years. She's a woman who has truly done the work of the Lord as long as I've ever known her. She has a heart for children. She's worked for over 10 years with Youth for Christ, with the conferences in Saratoga. She's worked as a volunteer coordinator. And through those years that I noticed that, maybe before, but I noticed that she was called Mama Murray by many, many, many children. And it was fitting that she got a job working with Samaritan's Purse that reaches out to the world with their Christmas boxes for children. Debbie's here to speak about those things. This is yours.
Well, hello. It's exciting for me to be here. I love coming to churches and being able to share the heart of the ministry and my heart for reaching children. I find Operation Christmas Child an exceptional program in the fact that it allows small local churches to reach the nations for Christ. Amen. And you do that just by simply packing a shoebox, by putting in things for hygiene, soap and washcloths and, a toothbrush and a brush and maybe some toys and school supplies. It can make a huge difference in the lives of these children. I was asked to share a little bit about myself. I am married to my husband, John. We will be married 40 years in November. We have 3 grown children, all of which are into ministry and work with children. It's a funny thing. And we're blessed. We're blessed to see all that God can do when you're willing to lay yourself down and say, Lord, use me. I grew up in a very small town called Maybrook, New York. It's it's about 60 miles outside of New York City. I grew up with my mother and father and brother. And as a child, they brought me to church from the time I was teeny tiny. And I did, it was at a small Methodist church, and I did all the things that a good Methodist child did. I went through confirmation class and, the whole thing. And I knew God. I believed in God. I knew that I could pray and that God answered prayer. But one night in 1976, way back then, a friend of mine invited me to a concert at their church. And it was held by a group from Ohio. It was a group of kids that came. And they shared the true ability to have a relationship with Christ. I didn't know that was a possibility before then. I loved God. I believed in all the things that the Bible said, but it never sunk in that Jesus wanted me to know Him more than with just my head. He wanted a heart relationship with me. He wanted to be my friend. He wanted to direct me. He wanted to guide me. He wanted to bless me. And it opened a whole new found world to me. At 16, I became the superintendent of that little Methodist church. And myself and 3 other teens rocked their world. And the kids knew the Bible, and the kids knew God was real, and the kids knew that he was their Savior and that he loved them. And so John and I met not shortly after that, and we've overseen youth groups, and John was a children's director at a church, and he's been a youth pastor. We've been at a church in Johnstown. We're now having our own church, and through all that, God has moved me into the position with Samaritan's Purse through Operation Christmas Child, which has been a tremendous blessing to me. And for John, he's opened up the doors to be a missionary. So our family, needless to say, is very busy, but very blessed. We've lived a number of different places, and for many years as my kids were growing up, I worked in a daycare because my kids were there, and I could see my kids, and I knew who was watching them, and I was able to affect the lives of many, many little ones. Well, when they went to elementary school, I started getting the nudge from the Lord, okay, well, time to move on to the next thing. So I got a job in an elementary school. And I worked there, and I ended up working at the elementary and middle school levels over the course of 19 years. So after 19 years, the school that my daughter works at Our Savior's Christian School in Albany, they needed help in the office, and they hired me part-time, to come in and work in the office. And I did that for 2 years, and I loved it. I loved meeting the parents and dealing with the kids, and then at the end of the 2 years, I was very saddened that they had to do budget cuts, and they had no choice but to cut my job. So I was very discouraged, and Stacy said to me, well, Deb, tell the Lord what's in your heart. What is in your heart that you want to do? And I said, I just want to be able to help bless children. I want to be involved in a ministry. I don't want to be in a secular job. I'm not a young spring chicken anymore. I want to invest my time into the kingdom. Next thing I know, my other friend sends me this job opportunity, and I applied for it. And they hired me, Operation Christmas Child hired me as a full-time temporary employee to help at the Christmas time when things are crazy. But they really loved me, and they said, we just had approval from the main office, and we've been approved to have a half-time, year-round person. Which, believe me, being married to a pastor and having other ministries on the table, half-time is awesome because I work in an office where they really put the Lord first and they put family second. And when there are things that are going on that are important, that I need to be there, we take that for one another. We make sure that we have the time, and we juggle schedules, and it's all good. So, a little bit about where I'm working. I work for the Northeast Regional Office for Operation Christmas Child. We're located in Albany, New York, and we work with volunteers from all over the Northeast. So the Northeast consists of Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, New York, Rhode Island, and Vermont. And we have folks that volunteer year-round that have different positions within that. So we have, people that work with churches in the area. So we have a coordinator for that, and then they have team members. And so they reach out to other churches that aren't involved in the project and see how they need assistance to get things set up and started if they choose that. We have community church. We have prayer mobilization people that consistently lift things up in prayer. And I do have with me, this isn't necessarily for a full-time volunteer position, but this is hard. And if you sign up, you become part of our prayer network partners. And what they do is once a month, they'll send you an email of things that are going on in the ministry that need prayer. And it's a neat way to see God moving and it's so important to have the prayer support, because Operation Christmas Child is only a small portion of Samaritan's Purse. Everything that Samaritan's Purse does is done through, first of all, prayer. When you pack your shoe boxes, first thing I want you to do is pray about whether you're supposed to give one to a little boy or a little girl, or maybe one of each, or maybe two of each, and what ages. And then actually spend time in prayer and say, Lord, what is something special this child needs? Because we've seen time and time and time and time and time again that specific boxes end up in the hands of children with things that nobody ever could have known that they needed. And they might be the only child in the whole distribution that needed that. So pray. We ask that you pick up a wow gift. Might be a really nice stuffed animal, soccer balls with deflated soccer balls with pumps are like, if a child gets that, they are like king of the hill. Yeah. And it opens up opportunities for them to share where that ball came from and who gave it to them. And they know Jesus supplied that. Really small portable radios and extra batteries, because there are people that are in countries that can't get any information anywhere because they have no outreach into what's around them. Be creative. Really pray about it. We had one little boy, when they went to a distribution, they were in a war-torn country and it was freezing and there was no electricity. And the children were huddled inside of a bombshell building. It was a school, waiting for their boxes. And there was one boy sitting there, and his lips were literally blue. He didn't have a sweater. He didn't have a jacket. He was there in a t-shirt because he wanted to be part of what was going on. Well, when he opened up his shoebox, there was a bomber's jacket in it. He was the only child there without a jacket. And it was the perfect size. And we have countless stories of this type of thing that goes on. So it is important. Don't just shop and throw a bunch of things that are cute in there, whereby that's good. But pray, Lord, what does this child want? Pack it for your child or your grandchild. It makes a difference on how you look at it, This year, they no longer allow toothpaste to go. It's too difficult to get it through customs. No food, no toothpaste, no liquids, and no war-related things. You can send a squirt gun if it looks like a silly little squirt gun, but if it looks like anything that's even close to real, you can't send any of that, because some of these children are so traumatized that it does more harm than good. So when you pack those boxes, you're going to bring them to probably a drop-off center. And at the drop-off center, the people receive it, and they pack them up, and they take those to a central drop-off, which is a little bit bigger. And they put them into cartons, and they have tractor trailers on their property. And then, do you know that the week of Thanksgiving, so the whole week prior to and of Thanksgiving, there are more tractor trailer trucks on the road from Samaritan's Purse than there are from Walmart. And those boxes are brought to, I believe there are 7 distribution centers around the United States. The processing centers take all the gifts, and all the gifts have to be inspected. It's not that they try not to take anything out unless it's something that cannot be in the box, okay? So if they find shampoo in there, they take it out. Then say the box is a little light, it's not really full, they have people that give gifts in kind, people that send things to the processing centers, and they'll pack those shoe boxes till they are full. And they tape them up, they put them in cartons, and then those cartons get loaded onto pallets, and they get loaded onto cargo planes. And from there, they go all over the globe. when they reach their initial destination, they are picked up by people from local churches in those countries. So there's a lot that goes into it. There's training on our end, because think about having to move so many boxes. How many boxes? All right. Well, last year for the Northeast, so those states I read, there were 384,816 boxes collected. 384,816. For the United States, what they collected, 8,801,607. But we have other countries that join in, Canada, and there are other countries. Globally last year, they sent out 10,623,776 boxes. Now that sounds like an astronomical figure to me. But when you think about all the people groups and all the children from all around the world, it barely makes a dent. This summer we had people, directors and volunteers. Then I went on a missions trip to Togo. And they pulled up to one of the distributions of the gifts, and they saw children leaving the building. And the heartbreak is they didn't have enough boxes. It was a realization to a lot of our volunteers. And now they did tell them that they were going to try to get more, but the disappointment was obvious, and our volunteers wept. Missions is important, and Samaritan's Purse has made a commitment to go throughout the world. They're alone, they've started going to the 1,000 Islands, and they're going island by island by island, delivering things to these children. They've now, when the children receive their boxes, they're also invited to take part in a discipleship program called The Greatest Journey. And teachers are trained in those churches to bring the children through this program. It's 12 lessons, and they learn who Jesus is, what he did for them, and how to share their faith with others. It's impacting not just that child's life, not just their family's lives, but it's affecting whole villages and whole regions. They've now, at this point, because they are in some of the most remotest parts, they are finding people that do not have written language. The only way they communicate is orally. And so they started working on that little dilemma. You know, Lord, how do we present this to them? And what they found out they could do is they now have solar-powered MP3 players. And they have put the courses on the MP3 players along with the Gospel of Mark and a number of stories from Luke and Genesis and different things. It's a start. It's to the point where they can, and these kids, they come alive with this. We've seen villages where they've been, and there are areas that are very, very thick with voodoo, and we've seen through the shoebox distributions them lay that down and come to Christ and become leaders in churches because they realize where the real power is. I have the opportunity every day to work with our on-the-ground volunteers here. We get phone calls. I do everything from copying to making postcards to phone calls to buying materials to getting supplies to, you know, all those little things. that end up adding up to a lot, because a lot of times there's nobody to do that. And I get thank yous all the time. It's my delight to help them, because I see all the work that they're, I have a paid position, people. Would I do it if it wasn't paid? Probably, but I'm blessed to have a paid position. These volunteers put in hours and hours and hours of their own time, hours in prayer, hours training, hours fundraising, hours calling and visiting. And people don't, a lot of times people don't really want to initially become involved with this because they think it's just another thing. And are there other programs out there? There absolutely are. But you know, you folks are talking about taking a mission to Africa. Think about how much it costs for one person to go to Africa. Now, you can take a shoebox and fill it and send it with the $9 and maybe spend $25 or $30. Now, how many of those shoe boxes could you do instead of going on the trip? Is it the same? No, but it's offering an opportunity for small churches and groups of people all over the world that may have an older congregation or folks that just don't have the finances to do that, and allow them to be a big part of global missions to make an impact all around the world. They deliver boxes to over 150 different nations at this point, and that continues to grow. They continue to look further and further and go deeper and deeper into the remote places. Boxes are delivered in all different means. They're delivered on motorcycles. They're delivered in trucks. They're delivered in ox carts. They strap them onto donkeys and camels. They slap them onto elephants. In the most remote places, they go by canoe or kayak. People put them on their shoulders and carry them when there's no other way to get them there. They deliver them by helicopter drop. You name it, they've probably thought about getting to where they need. But you know, you think about how long it must take them. You know, people ask, do they all get there by Christmas? They do not. All the boxes do not get there by Christmas. However, when they receive them, they are told about Jesus, and those are called, we call these go boxes. They're global opportunities. You fill those and they go around the world. And they have the greatest gift. It's a small colored booklet that gets put in. I have them out on the table if you guys want to take a look at it. But it's probably the only color thing that most of these children have ever seen. So it's treasured. You know, here you give something to a kid and it probably end up in the trash. There, and they're at the distribution and they've got their boxes in hand and they can't open them until they all have one. So they're sitting there reading through these books and sharing it with parents. It's important to, I'll say it again, it's important to pray before you pack your boxes. Things like school supplies in other countries, a notebook and a pack of pencils may mean the difference between a child going to school or not. Literally. We're very blessed here in the United States. We may find flaws, but every child gets to go to school. And if they don't have, teachers tend to find it for them. And people in other countries just don't have that. Time and time again, there have been stories about children, you know, wanting to go to school and praying, God, please, you know. Or a child receives a box, and in it is a pack of 10 pencils, and they bring the box up to the person that gave it to them and said, are these all for me? Because that school might have a little nub of a pencil that 10 kids are using. You know, a pack of pencils is like gold to them. Crayons that, you know, every kid in the United States has crayons. We probably have more than enough crayons. Some of these kids never seen them until they receive them in a box. But think of the color that brings into what they do. A lot of children are very limited on clothing. So t-shirts, they love caps, absolutely love caps. Sunglasses are huge. Clean socks, flip-flops, shoes, all those things. There's a story, if you go on to Operation Christmas Child's site, they have videos that you can watch, and there's one on there about a little boy that had been praying for 4 years for shoes, and he received red flip-flops of his very own, and what that meant to him. So I had to do something a little bit fun. Who here thinks that they may have traveled the furthest to get here? Is everybody really local? Oh, that was good.
We have a fellow that rode a bicycle from Vermont.
Yes.
Who rode a bicycle from Vermont?
Ray.
Ray, come see me. Ray, come see me.
Go up, Ray.
Thank you for making the extra effort. You're welcome. This is all about children. So let me ask, all right, let's try this. Who thinks they might have the most grandchildren? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. How many do you think you have? How many do you have? 12. How many do you have? 9 and 1. Who had 12? Come here, Sue. We, you know, people from all walks of life, all ages, everything, you know, all these different people come together. And, there's a story also on the website about a 98-year-old veteran, World War II veteran, and he's unable to get around very much anymore. So he started praying about what he could do to bless others. And he hand makes quilts for the children and puts them in the boxes. So who here thinks that they might be the oldest gentleman? Come on up.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, let's try one more. There's another lady about a story on there about a woman. She's now turned 101. 101. And she blesses the children by making dresses for the little girls out of pillowcases. And she gets up at anywhere between 2 and 5 in the morning, has her coffee and sits down on her machine and sews all day. And she said, you know, I saw an interview, and she was 100, and she was going to be turning 101. And they said, you know, well, we hear you're going to be 101 pretty soon. And she goes, if the good Lord has me stay. She says, if not, I'll be with him in glory. But until then, she'll continue to sew.
Amen.
Yeah. So who here thinks they might be the oldest woman? I'm not going to ask your age. You can talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to put it back in the box for you. But each year they make a Christmas ornament. So this past year was an elephant. Wasn't that fun? So, my encouragement to you is to get your friends together. If you can't pack a box by yourself, that is okay, and the Lord knows exactly where you are in your life. But maybe you and 3 or 4 friends could pack a box together. We have people that live shoeboxes. I mean, live shoeboxes. They will finish packing their last box, and the next day they go to the store and start filling their bins with new things. They look for the biggest deals, for the cheapest prices, to get the best bang out of their buck. And they found that if every week, maybe they'd spend $2 or $3 for some things in the box. Well, if you do that 52 weeks out of the year, it's a lot of stuff. So if you go on the Operation Christmas Child website, they actually have, I didn't print these, but they actually have month-by-month suggestions. So maybe 1 month might be toiletries. 1 month might be an article of clothing, whether it be socks or a hat, or 1 month might be school supplies. 1 month might be a game. 1 month might be, and so they pack all these things up, and then they get together. And some of the churches have packing parties. We have a church, very, very tiny church, 60 some odd people. And they have just lit on fire for Operation Christmas Child. And this year, they packed over 3,000 boxes. And none of them are rich. None of them are well-to-do. They all just really love children. And they love Jesus. And they feel that that's their little part of what they can do to change the world.
Amen.
And so don't think that anything you do is too small. Because God takes us, think about the fishes and the loaves and what God did with that little bit. And that's what he wants to do with each of us. He wants to take, if we choose to give our best with what we have, with the right heart, what's going to happen? God's going to bless it. So I appreciate everybody coming out today. I have lots of information at the table, shoe boxes if you need them. I have some t-shirts for those that didn't get. We like to get the word out and let people know more and more and more about Operation Christmas Child. And if you're interested in becoming more of a full-time year-round volunteer, come and see me. They have training right online. You would be part of a team. This church actually falls into the New York Southern Adirondack team. Those of you that live in Vermont are probably in the Vermont South area team. And we have actually teams. Vermont has central drop-off and drop-off team leaders, and the Southern Adirondacks actually has some church relations people, some community relations people, drop-off team leaders, and a logistics coordinator and an area coordinator. And so they're a little bit more set up. Our goal is we have what we call active and developing teams. An active team is a team that has raised up volunteers and now has an area coordinator that helps coordinate amongst the different things that are going on in that region. That's what makes it an active team. And we are praying for more and more and more of those. New York, the majority of New York already is active. We have, I think there's like 6 that are not. But in Vermont, we have a lot of developing teams that we're looking to mold and grow. And we find that when people become involved, that they become part of the family, you know. And so there's extra blessings when you have extra family, there's extra blessings.
Amen.
And so they support each other We spend our office in Albany, we spend every day, we start our day with devotions every day and prayer. And that directly impacts the difference. You know, when we're busy and there's some weeks I'm the only one in the office. And if I don't sit down and make myself do a devotional, and I do a couple days where I'm crazy busy and I don't do it, I notice a difference. So I now, whenever they go out of town, I put a big sticky note on my computer screen: stop, do devotion. Some other things that are very important for the box. When you pack your box, take the time to write a little note. It doesn't have to be a long letter. A little note. I packed this box just for you because Jesus loves you and so do I. You could put a picture of yourself in it. Sometimes kids are more excited about the picture and the note from another country than they are about when they initially open the box. And sometimes, not always, you may get a letter back. They do have a new thing online, started 2 years ago, where you can go right online and you can track your box. So say you have 5 boxes. You go online and you put in an email address, because that's how they get in touch with you. And you put down, you pay for 5 $9 fees. Okay, so you pay $45. They send you a PDF. It's a tracker, and it has a number on it. And you, however many boxes you paid for, you print that many. And then you cut them, just like you have little boy-girl stickers. Instead of using those, you would put the paper ones on, and for the age group, and it actually has a tracking number. Now, later on in the year, you can actually go on and put that number in, and it will tell you where your box went. So that's kind of cool. And you know, sometimes because there's so many, they get to the processing plants, the processing places, and they may end up going to 2 or 3 countries. So when you put your number in, you might not just get 1 country, you might get 2 or 3 countries. You know, especially for churches that pack boxes. And it's just kind of fun to see where they go. I've had the privilege of meeting a number of folks that we call full circle speakers. And a full circle speaker are young adults that received boxes as children that have now, for one reason or another, have come to the U.S. Some have been adopted, some for school. And they go and they share their testimony of how the box affected their lives. And we have some incredible young people that go around and do that. I think our youngest right now is 14 that is doing that. But, you know, folks that have lived through the Rwanda genocide and just horrific situations. But God saw fit to deliver them. And how He has changed their lives and how they've grown and how they are working to better the lives of other children. So are there any questions you have for me? Yes, there are some online. If you go on our Operation Christmas Child's site, or even just Google, if you Google Operation Christmas Child speakers, full circle speakers, I know Eve is one, YVE, and Alex, and there are a number of them, Jackie and Giftlin, but yeah, you can go on and look at their stories and just see the joy, you know. And they each have something from the box that was their favorite. You know, Eve, Steve got his box, and in his box was a scarf. Now, he lived in Africa, okay? And his brother used to tease him and pick on him because he got a scarf. And he cherished that scarf. Well, then they ended up being eligible to be in a relocation program. And they came to the U.S. And where did they land? In New York City in the winter. And Eve reached into his little bag and wrapped the scarf around his neck and looked at his brother and he goes, ha ha. But he said God knew, way before he knew, that he was going to need that scarf. Yes? I would talk to you about that later. Yes?
The Child's Discipleship Program, The Greatest Journey.
Yes.
Is that something that we can pay for them to do? How is that?
Absolutely. You can online. It costs $6 for the child. That covers, whatever additional training the teacher might need. It covers their books. It covers, they have a graduation, a full graduation for the kids, caps and gowns. And let me tell you, this, in some countries, that is the only thing that child will ever have. So it's very significant in the lives of the children and then their parents' lives to have their child to accomplish something like that.
And someone's trained to actually go to that program with the child?
Yes.
Yeah. And I just realized that $6 is also training local children ministry staff.
And those children, many of them go on to lead other children. They are raised up in it. And so they in some places where they started out with like 6 children under a tree. And before long they had a crowd. And so the people that owned the land would put up a pavilion that they could meet under. And they fill that. And, it's life-giving to these communities because they see the difference.
Where is the nearest center that anyone can go to volunteer? Is that in Albany? Like, say, when I was down in Charlotte area, say we go and we're volunteers.
At the processing centers?
Is there anything like that?
No. Chicago is the closest. And you can go online and sign up for those. Absolutely. And I'll tell you, we are looking for places in this area because there's no place right here. You're either going to Bennington or you're going to Saratoga or you're going, Yes. Another thing that you should know is when these boxes go into countries, every child gets a box. If their parents will allow them to have a box, every child gets a box. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whether they come from Christian homes or Muslim homes or where they come from. So they're allowed, That's another sad thing is to watch children outside the door whose parents won't allow them in. But you know what? They're sitting outside the window and guess what? They're hearing the message. Yes?
Do you know the ages of the children? Say like, my husband and I said, do we know the age of the child?
On these little pamphlets out there, they have a thing on the back for a boy or a girl. You mark boy or girl and you have a choice of ages 2 to 4, 5 to 9, or 10 to 14.
So you decide.
Do we leave these with you? They can fill out?
Nope, you take that with you. If you do a shoebox, put it in the shoebox.
Shoebox after you fill it?
I do. For those of you that aren't filling shoe boxes that might want to give, you could probably give money to Susan and she can use it to help sponsor some other shoe boxes. That way it's coming from this community, which is awesome. Anything else?
Debbie, so in this whole northeast area, how many full-time paid are?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Okay, so we have on our staff, we have our regional director, who is Cecil Polydor. We have 2 regional managers. Tracy Thornton is in New York City, and Corey Barrett is in Connecticut. They're remote managers. And then Christina is full-time office administrator, and I'm half-time, and that is it. 5 of us. 4 full-time and a half-time.
Paid staff, all the paid staff that they have.
So you can see how important it is for volunteers, you know. Anything else? Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Debbie, thank you so much for joining us and giving your time, and this is wonderful. Thank you.
It's been great.
You know, I've had the opportunity to work with Operation Christmas Child. I lived down south, and I had a paid position that I did for the time that they were actually taking the shoe boxes in, and that was a pretty neat experience. I tend to work in financials, so I got to be the one that was taking your money. And then I had the opportunity also to go in and volunteer in the distribution center, and you see all these boxes, shoe boxes going by you, and underneath your desk, underneath your countertop there, you have all these boxes with all these toys that are there that you can fill in if the boxes are not up. And it was just the neatest thing. And you're going through it and taking out any liquids. Sometimes people put in chocolate and stuff like that, and you can't have that kind of stuff. So it was a great experience, and I would say if you ever get opportunity to go and be a volunteer in any way, it would be such a blessing. And so with that, I think that's, one other thing I wanted to share was, you know, Debbie talked about how these kids think they've got the greatest gift when they get these boxes. But I want to tell you that I've had the experience in other countries to go, you know, a couple of times to go to a couple different countries. And it amazes me with the little that they have. And I bet you anything, when they get that shoe box, I bet they don't hide it underneath their arm and run off and use it all to themselves like maybe our kids would do. Those kids will share what they have. They will share what they have. You give them 10 pencils, I don't know how many they'll keep, but I can guarantee you they're going to share. So, you know, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much today for doing this. All right, thank you, everybody, and God bless. We hope you enjoyed our guest today, and that in some way your life was touched and you were encouraged with your walk with Jesus Christ. Know that choosing to walk with Jesus is the most important and the best decision you will ever make. Know that he loves you enough to die for you. And when he was nailed to that cross, he paid the price for your sins. If you haven't yet, won't you ask him to come into your life today? All you need to do is say, Jesus, I know you died for me on the cross, and I would ask you, please forgive me for all my sins and to lead me into life everlasting. I thank you, Jesus, that you rose from the grave and that you are alive in heaven, making an eternal home for me. If you prayed this prayer or something similar, know that you are now a part of the family of God and that the angels in heaven are rejoicing over you. God desires that none should perish, but have everlasting life. Know you are welcome to contact us with any questions or prayer requests that you may have. We would gladly welcome you to join us on the second Saturday of each month at 9 a.m. at Jacob's Well in Cambridge, New York, where the love of Jesus Christ flows through those who are there. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.